following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it may be as you're listening. Welcome. You have stumbled across a program called Ask Claire along the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm your host. My name is Claire Hall, and if you've been listening these past few months, you realize that this is a pretty wide-ranging, eclectic program. When they recruited me to do this, they said, I get to talk with anybody I want to talk with. And I said, that sounds like a great deal to me, but there are some recurring themes, including my love of great books and great literature. And so I'm really happy to welcome to the program today best-selling author Jonathan Evison. Hi.
Hey, thanks for having me, Claire.
All
Here
right.
comes my baby. She just my baby girl just pushed the door open, so she's joining us too, it sounds like.
Oh, that's cool. What's her name again? I mean, she is, for folks who have not, a name that has special resonance, right?
Yeah, her name is Lulu. Her real name is Lucille Ball Evison. We call her Lulu.
Oh, I love it. And I have so richly enjoyed being your Facebook friend, learning about the writing process directly through you and seeing pictures of the beautiful Miss Lulu, right after she arrived in the world up until now. And how old is she now anyway?
She's 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah, just starting to walk. My kids are late walkers. They're usually verbal pretty early, but then they take their time walking. But that's, any parent will tell you, no hurry there.
Amen.
They start walking, there's no looking back.
Yeah, really. Okay, well, I want to let folks know that you and I have some things in common. One of them is that we both call the beautiful Pacific Northwest home, and maybe I'm prejudiced, but I got to think this is one of the most beautiful parts of the country, if not the world. And your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Well, I do a national tour every year for like 11 years. So I've done like 11 national tours, and sometimes they're pretty grueling. Sometimes, 60 cities a year, but I'm always glad to come back here. I know it's one of the most beautiful places. I fly into everywhere, and I'm just always so glad to come back, fly over the Cascades and see all the beautiful water and the Olympics. And my heart goes out to everybody in California, what they're dealing with now with climate change and the fires. Now it sounds like mudslides, and I'm also really grateful for our climate here, Moisture never looked so good, right?
Amen. Another thing we've got in common is we both entered this world on September 27th. And
Oh, that's right. We have the same birthday, Librans.
Yep. I came along a few years before you did, but maybe that's one of the reasons why your writing has resonated so strongly with me. I don't know, but it's when I saw that, I just said, when Facebook said Jonathan's birthday is today, and I said a couple of years back, I said, well, way cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, for folks who have not had the pleasure of discovering Jonathan's work yet, he has published 5 novels now, and I have read and richly enjoyed all 5 novels. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I know when you're book touring, book plugging, you always want to get the new book up front. So, let's talk about Lawn Boy for a few minutes and then go back, and I'd like to talk about some of your other books and also just about the writing life and how you approach the art and craft of literature. So, Lawn Boy.
Well, for me, I'll handle it generally and then kind of, work Lawn Boy in the conversation. For me, it always begins with character. Everything begins with character. Everything we call plot is all about the evolution of character for me. Your character wakes up and they have a reality, and then they have an idealized self. Well, let's think about your story. You know what I mean? You were born one way, and you had this idealized self of what you wanted to be. And between these two signposts, this is the whole Penelope of human drama, is just trying to get from the reality self to the idealized self. And so I usually I always start with a character, and it's usually somebody who's marginalized. In the case of Mike, it's a the working poor, basically. In the case of Harriet, it's an 80-year-old woman. In the case of Trev, it's somebody with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, but usually somebody who's usually kind of marginalized by the larger society. And I kind of feel like my job as a novelist is just to sort of report on the human condition and what it's like for people to be alive now. So sometimes people describe my books as quiet that way, but that's this is what I'm interested in writing about. I just want to inhabit my characters and live inside them and try to accrue actual experience,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like writing novels makes me a more expansive person, better husband, better dad, It's that old walk a mile in my shoes kind of thing. So
yeah,
it all
I remember
starts with empathy.
Yeah. I remember when you were starting work on Harriet, and you made a Facebook post to the effect of, "Boy, I get to live inside an 83-year-old woman's skin for a while." And I could just sense even then. I said, "Well, where is this going to go? What an interesting adventure!" And
I just met with a book group yesterday in Hansville, and it was all elderly women. Nobody under, say, 65 probably, but some of them more closer to Harriet's age, 80 and stuff, and every one of them was just like, how did you do that? You got inside my head. And I guess the answer is just empathy. I've always been an empath. It wasn't really that hard. I feel like experiences are generally kind of universal, and you just have to kind of recontextualize everything, change the window dressing. How would I feel if I was female? How would I feel if I was born in 1937 instead of 1968? And how would I feel if these were the external pressures, working on me, the outside forces of the world, And you just try to relate and empathize with that character as much as possible. And then it becomes really natural. It felt really natural to be Harriet. It helps that my mom's the exact same age as Harriet, so I had some sort of it's not her story, but it when I write outside of my experience, I always have to have, some kind of confidant or somebody to help, vet it. So it doesn't, because one false note, you lose the reader. And so, like, the novel I just turned in this week, I have a Iraq combat veteran in it, and I'm not an Iraq combat veteran. And so, I had 3 readers who are Iraq combat veterans read it and vet it for me and tell me, this doesn't ring true here. We don't say that. One Marine would never talk about another Marine that way. They would never describe this violence so graphically amongst each other. It was just, you got to have somebody, you get into the appropriation argument, and I don't really believe it. Mike is half Latino, my character Mike Munoz in Long Boy, which I am not. However, I raised my 2 nephews basically in my household for half of their life, and they were biracial, and they're also right around Mike's age, and so that offered me, a very intimate window and look into that. So there always had to be somebody in my life close, or else somebody I could, because I want to write outside my experience. Nobody wants to read another novel about a fat alcoholic white guy. I could write that novel all day long, but I'm not interested in that. I want to, like I said, I want to expand myself. I want to live the, widest range of experiences I can, and I'm able to do that on the page, and I feel really lucky.
Well, that's great. And as you were sharing this last thought, one thing that popped into my head, at least for me, one of the great novels of all time, I don't know if you're a fan, Stephen Crane, The Red Badge of Courage, the ultimate novel of what it's like to be a Civil War veteran, and yet he was born after the war, never saw combat, but a classic in so many people's views because he managed to do
look at Jack London, man. He looks from the perspective of a wolf. And, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He pulled that off. Not very many people have pulled the dog POV off very authoritatively for me, but he certainly did. In Call of the Wild and White Fang. Yeah, it's been many years since I read The Red Badge of Courage.
Yeah, me too, but it's one that stayed with me. And I want to get back to a couple of other things you mentioned, and I think even more than our shared birthday, this is why one of the big reasons why your work resonates so strongly with me, and I hope at least a few people listening to this podcast will be inspired to explore your work. that you're championing of marginalized people and your sense of empathy. And we've been following each other on Facebook, and I think you know that I'm a good old bleeding heart liberal in public life who is really doing my best to give voice to
you're
homeless.
you are one courageous person is what
Wow.
I think you are, man.
Well,
I've watched you. It's hard for me to believe it's only been a year since you transitioned.
Yeah, actually less than a year. That
blows my mind. Because I've been following you for when you said that the other day, that it had been however many months. I was like, God, is that it? That took a lot of courage, man.
Well, thank you, but can I give you the response that I've given to other people who say it's courageous? I mean, my folks always taught me accept a compliment graciously, so I do, but yet It's never felt courageous to me. It's felt like I'm just doing what I finally had to do to have a chance at peace of mind and happiness in this next phase of my life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I can see that from your point, but that's what every courageous person will say about being courageous. You know what I mean? What is it
so.
that the hero and the coward feel fear in equal measure or whatever? It's like, from the outside looking in, it certainly seems courageous. But I see what you're saying too. It just feels natural. But how many people does it feel natural for that don't take the steps to realize it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I'm with you there, but, again, speaking up for the marginalized, in my work, it's children, it's seniors, it's veterans, it's the homeless, it's folks with mental illness that, when I finished Lawn Boy, I put my Kindle aside and I cheered. I said, this guy gets it again. He is a voice for people who, society, other than maybe their family, their small circle of friends, engages them, but the rest of the world just really ignores them, belittles them. But you show us in such a beautiful way that these are people of worth, of value, and that every soul is unique. And so I really appreciate that.
I appreciate it too. And I don't want to read a novel about weddings in Cape Cod. You know what I mean? It's like I'm just amazed at a lot of the fiction I read about, people write from their experience, and I think a lot of writers tend to come from better, stronger financial backgrounds than me. I'm an autodidact. I didn't go to college. I learned to read just like Mike. Mike's experience is my experience. My mom worked 2 jobs, so I grew up in the library, and I just kind of found my way through literature. I found the pre-revolutionary Russians, kind of Dickens, and I just kind of. And I think a lot of people, in order to call yourself an artist in this culture, I think a lot of people come from, upper middle class backgrounds. They go to, good schools and get MFAs, and if they're writing about their experiences, those experiences are going to be, reflected in their lifestyle, I guess. And so, I look back at the 20th century, the mid and early 20th century writers, and the model was to go out and get experience, like we just talked about Jack London. Well, Jack London went to the Klondike, you know what I mean? He made a gold claim. He went there and even Hemingway, who is essentially a trustafarian, he went out and drove an ambulance in somebody else's Ford. That was the model, to go out and, Conrad and Melville, these guys went out to sea for years at a time. It was that go out and accrue experience and then write about it. But now it's more of a feudal system now, where it's like, get a liberal arts education, go to an MFA program, read Dennis Johnson and Tim O'Brien, and it's just not. I don't know. It doesn't. I feel like populist fiction is a bad word now, or something. Like it's just kind of died. There's a few people out there doing it still. I love Rick Russo for that reason, and I just feel like those voices, the working class, are just kind of underrepresented in the arts in general.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we don't need one more novel about a brand new MFA graduate who's struggling to get her first novel published while dealing with a lot of upper middle class angst.
There's a lot of them out there. And, I don't want to denigrate those. I just think it's just it's just not a very wide range of experience. And I think empathy now more than any time, and in our history, or at least, I mean, I really don't think things have been this sort of aggro since about 1860 in terms of, wealth disparity
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like we need those voices more than ever. And I'm glad to see, people of color getting more, people of color writers getting more, I mean, a lot of angry white people are going to complain that, with the death of the patriarchy that, hey, it's impossible. I'm not going to win a National Book Award. I'm a white guy. And it's like, I'm fine with that, man. We had our day for, 8,000 years or something. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm glad to see more diversity, like guys, like Tommy Orange and, native writer from Oakland. And I don't know. I'm heartened. I'm seeing more voices. I feel like fiction is getting more diverse. Still seems like some of these writers are a little young to me, but
Mm-hmm.
at least we're getting, a wider range of experiences.
I think that's great, and you started to talk about your youth and how you came to literature. And can you expand on your formative years a little bit more and share with us the path that led you into finding fiction as a creative, artistic, professional outlet?
Well, my dad did me a couple of solids before he left. He was kind of a deadbeat, actually. But, he left at an early age and left my mom with 5 kids. But he did read Dickens to me aloud when I was very young. So that was huge. And it didn't take me long to recognize that my family was Dickensian, just full of, quirky characters. And, there was a lot of humor and we were working class, which is, and I just really connected with Dickens, and I always do to this day. All the writers I truly love kind of have the Dickens DNA. I kind of feel like there's, when I talk about writers in English, you got like Dickens on one side and then Shakespeare on the other. And I feel like these are two of the biggest influences. And like in the case of Shakespeare, it's like, Shakespeare deals with large characters exercising their dominion over the world more. We're dealing with more royalty. Not that he can't write a great character like Falstaff or something like that, but I mean, it seems to be bigger characters that have more power, whereas Dickens writes about little people in the outside world working on them, And so it's more of a humanist approach. And so, like, Twain fits nicely under the Dickens umbrella, and Steinbeck and Norris and Vonnegut, and like all the writers that I really, really love have that DNA. Whereas the ones like Faulkner, who falls very firmly into the Shakespeare umbrella, or Cormac McCarthy, those writers I admire to a large degree, but I don't have the same intimate relationship with them. My relationship with them is a little more contentious, and I don't feel at home in them the way I do those other writers.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad gave me, when I was second or third grade, he gave me Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions.
Oh boy!
So while everybody else was reading the Great Rain, I was reading Vonnegut, and so I think that really kind of made a writer out of me. I mean, it really helped shape my worldview. I was reading adult content at a young age. All my brothers and sisters were much older. I mean, by the time I was 13 years old, I was touring in punk band. I had my own magazine, a fanzine called Simplex One when I was 13 years old. I was a pretty industrious little guy, and all my friends were like at least 4 or 5 years older. Inmates. And
That's cool.
They had to be old enough to drive. So I guess that's partly I'm lucky to have been the youngest of 5,
Mm-hmm.
And again, like back to Harriet, the fact that I was really kind of raised mostly by my mom and my sisters has really helped me, I think, write relatable female characters. I really love to write female characters. And I mean, I think the experience of being raised by women helps me immensely that way, because I think as much of a guy as I am, I love me some playing some darts and shuffleboard and drinking beer and watching football and doing all that guy stuff. But I think I'm also one of those guys that actually is okay with talking about his emotions or, emoting in general, which is not, traditionally a guy thing. I mean, I've been to a million book clubs, and I've only been to one all-guy book club. Guys don't have book clubs, generally speaking, because guys just want to watch a football game and hit each other. They don't want to talk. They don't want to get all touchy-feely about, emotions and stuff. They want to be together but most of you are just going to flip each other's shit the whole time. Whereas women have to get together and really get down to brass tacks.
Exactly.
And so I can go either way in that respect.
Yeah, I love that. So becoming a writer, and when did you reach that bold moment that said, hey, this is something I want to do, this is something I can do, and how long and how challenging was the path from there to publication of Lulu?
Epic. Okay, so I decided I wanted to be a writer in third grade. So I had skipped second grade. I was already the youngest kid. I was a September birthday, so I was the young kid in my class. So, I'm not quite 5 when I start kindergarten, but then I skipped second grade and went straight to third grade. So now I'm 2 years younger. Well, my sister died in a car accident, a freak car accident, the weekend of her 16th birthday. My parents' marriage, dissolved, and my mom moved us up here. The kids, my older brothers and sisters were almost all out of the house by this time. There was a couple of years where my second oldest brother and my sister were still in the house. My oldest brother was out of the house. So it was really me, my mom, my brother, and my sister. I was struggling. My family was falling apart. My primary caregiver, who had been my oldest sister, when you have 5 kids like my mom, that's just how it goes. The oldest kids kind of becomes a parent almost. And so I had lost my primary caregiver. I'd lost my dad. We moved to a new place. And so my mom decided to have me just do third grade again rather than, she thought it would be an easier transition for me just to be 1 year younger than everybody again instead of 2. And so with all those circumstances in my life and the fact that I had already had I'd already had the curriculum basically, which was, dinosaurs, penmanship, I don't remember what else. So it became a behavioral problem a little bit. And I'm also biochemically just manic, like off the charts manic, which allows me to be very productive, but it's, I'm walking a tightrope. So my teacher, I credit my teacher, Mrs. Hampton, my third grade teacher, for saving my life because she also saved her classroom, but she just let me sit in a corner and write. She saw that there was this thing I like to do, this focused activity that kept me calm and and it's still the reason I write, because of the focus. Because, just listen to me. I'm all over the place. I talk a million miles a minute. But when I write, I feel like I'm my best me. I'm focused on the page. And she noticed that about me, and she just let me write. She knew I had the curriculum, and so she made a writer out of me, but she also saved her class, you know what I mean, because I was just disrupting everybody else. And so I published a children's story, Seattle Pacific University, in, I guess it was 4th grade, published my story, The King Without a Crown. And it was just like that. I was published in 4th grade, and then nothing for 30 years. I wrote eight novels. I wrote my first novel when I was 17, and from 17 to 39, I wrote 8 books, and none of them were published. Several of them I dug holes and, buried them and salted the earth. And the truth was, it was never one of these stories where I was like, I was just determined. I know I can make it if I just persevere. I just needed the work. I'd still, if they stop publishing me tomorrow, I'm still going to write books. They need to be. That's when I'm my best me. That's when I'm at my best. And so I kept going just as a matter of course. I did some due diligence, not very well, meaning I was sending 400-page manuscripts to office buildings in New York, but, just carpet bombing, none of them even getting any attention. And then finally when I was 39, it all came together with All About Lulu. And, I credit Richard Nash. He was a brilliant editor, and the Soft Skull was just like basically working out of one room in Brooklyn then, but, he managed to make that book. We did a lot of the work and publicity ourselves because there was no budget, but the book ended up selling like 25,000 copies in trade paper, and it's still backlists, and they came out with an anniversary edition. And so ever since that day, my life's just been a dream. Now they're making books and films, and and it's been really. I've been operating at such a deficit. It's been really easy for me to keep it real. You know what I mean? Having sudden success. And I also saw all my friends become rock stars in their 20s. All my old bandmates went to Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. You know what I mean? So I got a up close and personal look at people dealing with success and who dealt with it gracefully and who didn't deal with it gracefully. And so I think that was an advantage. So I'm just grateful every day for being in the game.
That's wonderful, and I think your joy comes through in your work as well, and that's another reason why I enjoy it. I got another question I'd like to throw at you and have you ruminate on. I mean, I was introduced to your work by West of Here, and of all your books, I think maybe that's the one, at least my view, is most strongly rooted in its place, its setting. I mean, the characters are so, they're so strongly shaped by the setting, but yet, all your works are set in our home territory, the beloved Northwest. Do you think of yourself as a Northwest writer or as a writer whose works just happen to be set in the Northwest?
Oh, definitely. Look, I'm actually a fifth-generation Californian, Angelino. Yeah. Until, my dad moved us up here when I was like 8. But I definitely identify as a Northwesterner. I definitely feel like, it's kind of nice. I mean, we don't have that long of a tradition of writers writing about place time and again. You know what I mean? Like some places do. So I feel like there's that opening for me to be one of the people that gets to report on that. And West of here is definitely, yes, the most Northwest, because it's all about place. And again, that's about character too, though. Like people, every one of my books is really a character study. And in West of Here, even though it's told from 48 limited points of view, and it has a bifurcated timeline by 120 years, and a big magical realist street view, and it's really just a character study about place. I just allowed the place, the Olympic Peninsula, to sort of usurp the role of protagonist. And so then all the ancillary characters are sort of analogous, I guess, to like the decisions your protagonist would make. How your decisions, it's the decisions your character make that complicate their journey and shape them, through the dramatic arc. And I think with West of Here, I just made place that, and then the people became like the decisions. They became the outside forces that shaped the place. So a moment ago, like you said, how the place shaped the people, and that relationship goes both ways, because the people are shaping the place. And that book was inspired by I used to camp every river valley in the Olympics, The Olympic mountains drain radially, like I think there's 13 river valleys, and I try to camp each one every year. And to get to some of these amazingly beautiful, untouched virgin forests, you had to drive through, hundreds of thousands of acres, just scorched earth. Just clear cut. And so it always kind of put me in the mind of, Faulkner's quote about how the past is not the past.
Yeah.
And so like for Faulkner, that was about the institution of slavery as much as anything. But here, it's about the institutions of commercial, logging and resource management and the treaties with the Indians and the things that shape the history of this region. And so I like this idea of having, the boom town and the bus town in conversation and pulling all the history, pulling all that arc through, but never really actually addressing it, just addressing it as a conversation between, two epics in history. But it's really just a character study. I mean, it sounds so complex, but really to me, it's just a character study.
Right. Okay, well, our half hour has just flown by. Jonathan Evison has been our guest. His most recent novel is Lawn Boy. He's also author of The Revised Fundamentals of Caregiving. This is Your Life, Harriet Chance, all about Lulu and West of Here. And, I know some authors, when they've got a new book, they don't want to talk about it too much, but you said you've shipped off another one, and is there anything you would feel comfortable with telling us about?
Sure, it's done. It's a done deal, so you're going to like it. It's the most like West of Here. Since West of Here. It's called Legends of the North Cascades, at least tentatively.
Ooh.
And it takes place in the North Cascades instead of the Olympics. And half of the story takes place now, in 2018, and half of the story takes place in 12,500 BC on the polar air and ice sheet.
Wow.
And these two epics are in conversation, and they are organic. I can't give you any spoilers, but as the book progresses, you see that these are not separate storylines. These storylines are connected.
I love it.
By a certain way. And so, I'm really, really excited about it. My editor just absolutely freaked, You're always nervous. You hand it out.
Sure.
And my agent was a little bit like, I don't know what I think of this. I don't think she's had it so much. And then I go, well, let's send it to Chuck. And Chuck just, it just bowled him over. It devastated him. So I'm really excited to get it to readers. I think it's, I don't know. You always kind of think your next book is the best, but I don't know. I got a really good feeling about this one.
Yeah, another thought, about your work. I mean, we've talked about, some of the themes that recur in it, and yet, in so many ways, I love the fact that you really don't repeat yourself in a lot of ways. I grew up a huge Beatles fan. My older sister, I think, she was 12 when they hit America, so I grew up with Beatles, Beatles, Beatles. And not too long ago, I saw an interview with Paul McCartney where he said, they loved the Supremes, for example, but there was very clearly a Supremes sound, and once they found the winning formula, they stuck with it. But they made a very conscious decision never to repeat themselves, and I feel like, you don't do that either, and that's one more reason why every new novel from you, is a wonder, a delight, a revelation.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's interesting because I see it's true. Like, I am trying to reinvent myself each time and push myself to a new place because, like I said, I want to accrue the experience. But the truth is I kind of just have one theme, So they look all different on the surface, but my only theme really is just reinvention, man. I mean, it's just like, just this idea that we can be the people we want to be, that we can change, that, our actions and our decisions can shape us and and you can tell that story a billion different ways, so it doesn't really get repetitive. But, I always choose sort of a different aperture or a different subject or a different, like this one is partially written, the one I just turned in is partially written from the perspective of an 8-year-old girl. And I have a precocious 8-year-old boy, so that was really helpful. So I know I can get, sometimes you read a kid character and it's like the white-haired boy, like the child's just wise beyond their years, and it doesn't quite ring true. It was really helpful to have an 8-year-old, to reference.
I love it.
I know the kind of things 8-year-olds say. I know how they reason. I know how they, So that's, writing that's out of my experience.
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, am I not living proof that our decisions can shape every aspect of our lives?
Absolutely. No, I mean, you're living my theme of reinvention completely.
Yeah. So there.
I mean, and I that's why I like your story so much. I want everybody deserves to do that, But so many people get stunted, I think. So many people don't. Again, that's why I think it's courageous, because I think people have the desire to try to be that, but they just can't push themselves over the edge to do it. They can't, you know what I mean? They're scared, or they've just been told so many times that they can't do it that they don't do it. But I mean, what a better world we would live in if everybody did that. You know what I mean? If everybody would just, you know what I mean? We wouldn't have. I mean, most of the problems of the world are people. I mean, all these xenophobic people right now. I mean, if they would just travel, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, if these kids that grow up in these little small towns in West Virginia, if they would just move to New York with $60 and meet their first gay friend, meet their first black friend, have their first, Latino friend bail them out of a jam, their whole world view would change. And that's why, I mean, the military does it too. I mean, you don't usually have xenophobic guys that have been in the military. When you've been in the trench with somebody, it doesn't matter what color they are, but, which way they swing or whatever, however they identify, none of that matters. And it's all from experience. And so all these people just live in fear because they don't have the experience, man. I mean, just think if college was free and everybody got to go to college. Who cares if it even led to a job? Everybody could just get a liberal arts education and expand their mind and go to school and meet, people that look different from them and act different from them and,
and think different.
The problem would be solved. And this is supposed to be the strength of America. And all these people are making it into, our fault.
Well, Jonathan, this has been an absolute delight, and I want to put you on the spot. Once the new book hits the stores, will you come back and talk about it?
Absolutely, yeah. It'll be long enough away. People will it'll be probably a couple of years before they publish it, but absolutely, man. And I appreciate you having me.
I loved it. Jonathan, thank you for being with us. And
Thanks,
I'm still working on a memorable sign-off all my own, but until then, I'm using Happy Trails to you till we meet again.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.